Story 1. I know this title is confusing as it is, so allow me to explain this a bit. My stepsister asked me to be the DJ at her wedding, which was located in a barn. The day before the wedding, we spent the entire day decorating the barn to her specifications. I had spent nearly 3 hours of that day trying to troubleshoot problems with the speaker set and determining why the provided phone and playlist weren't working with the adapter. After finally getting the phone to be compatible, I began testing the audio and seeing how loud the volume had to be to reach the entire barn. This speaker could reach volumes up to 100, with 25 being loud but bearable. However, I had to increase the volume to 87 to be heard across the entire barn. Before leaving for the day, I asked the bride to email me the playlist or to give her phone to someone who would arrive at the barn before her so I could set up the music. On the day of the wedding, I arrived 30 minutes early as discussed, but she hadn't left her phone with anyone or emailed me the music. I approached her aunt, who was in charge of keeping things together, and asked what to do. She told me to just sit in the stall and wait for the bride to arrive with the playlist. I should mention now that I was wearing a Gothic-style dress, and it was a really humid day, per the bride's request. She wanted me to wear dark colors so as not to draw any attention to me or the booth. I didn't contest this, so I began configuring the speakers to be ready to play the music once she arrived and handed me the phone. As soon as she entered the barn, she berated me. "Why isn't the music playing?" "I never got the music as a CD or as an email playlist to bring on my own phone," I replied. "Whatever," she said, handing me her phone. "Just get the music playing and start the Here Comes the Bride music at exactly 4:30. "Not a problem," I assured her. I got the music hooked up and playing the regular playlist for the guests, then stepped out of the stall to get some fresh air. That stall was getting really stuffy, and the reverb in that stall was making my head pound after just the first 2 minutes. As soon as she saw me step out, she made a gesture to her aunt, who pointed at me. "Get back in the booth," the aunt instructed. Confused, I replied, "The music is set to loop. I don't need to be in there until 4:30. It's only 4:17. "The bride wants you to stay in the booth." "Stay in the booth," she insisted. I didn't want to start a fight, but I was already feeling wronged by being forced to stay in a horse stall with the reverb making my head rattle. Not wanting to confront them, I conceded and went back into the booth. If you can imagine being stuck beside a loudspeaker in a movie theater for an extended period, that's how bad it was for just 2 minutes. Now imagine that for roughly another 15 minutes as I waited for the cue to start the Here Comes the Bride song she had renamed on her phone. At 4:30, I started the song, and she began walking down the aisle. Once I started tuning it down for them to begin the ceremony, I stepped out of the stall to watch, only to be shoved back into the booth by the aunt and told, quite sternly, not to leave the stall. So I sat there, unable to time when to play the Walking Away song until the aunt started flailing her limbs, which I took as a signal. Once the newlyweds left the aisle, I shifted the playlist back to the waiting list and moved to step out, only to be shoved back in again, this time by the bride. "Are you trying to ruin my wedding?" she demanded. "No, I just can't be expected to stay in this booth the entire time," I replied. "It's my wedding. If I tell you to stay in here, you are staying in here," she insisted. "Look, I don't want to be rude on your special day, but please remember that I'm doing this for free and at great inconvenience to me. I have a term paper due by 2 a.m. At any time, I could leave and have someone else deal with the technical mess that is this DJ booth that smells like horse manure," I explained. The bride stormed off, crying, and tried to tell her father, my stepdad, that I was ruining her wedding. He mostly took it with a grain of salt and just continued to mingle with the rest of the guests. About 2 hours passed, and my mom entered the booth. "Aren't you going to come out and eat?" she asked. "I'm not allowed to leave." "The bride said so," I replied. "What?" she flagged down my stepdad. "You haven't eaten anything, have you?" "I haven't even been able to use the bathroom," I admitted. At this point, not only did I desperately need to use the bathroom, but I was feeling extremely disoriented from the reverb in the booth for 2 hours, the heat, and not having eaten anything. "You don't look so good," my stepdad observed. Mom answered, "We're going home." "Doesn't the bride need her to run the booth until everyone goes home?" my stepdad asked. I set up the music to the dance playlist, I explained, unsteadily standing up. It's set to loop. If someone wants to fiddle with this, it's their problem. I feel like I'm going to be sick. As we were leaving, the bride started to berate me for leaving the booth again when my mom and stepdad looked at her for a moment and simply said, "We're going home." On the half-hour car ride back to the house, I had passed out and woke up to my mom gently patting my face to wake me up and holding some ice cream under my nose. After corralling me into the house, we had to check my blood sugar levels. I had dipped into a low blood sugar level, and for the next 2 days, I was barely able to hear anything due to the ringing in my ears. The bride continued complaining those 2 days about how unprofessional it was for me to leave the booth looking the way I did. On a positive note, I did submit that term paper on time. So, a common question is about the sister-in-law and stepsister terminology. I have mixed verbiage due to where I was raised a rural town, if that makes sense. But she is my stepsister. I hope that clears it up better. P.S. It appears that some people don't understand the full background of this situation. That is my fault. I live with my mom and stepdad. It was not my speaker setup they provided to me. They kept handing me the wrong cables from who knows where in that nightmare of a barn, half of which were shorted out or badly frayed, which I refused to use for safety reasons. I'm not a professional DJ at all. I only told them, get me a loudspeaker, a laptop, and the music playlist either on a CD or a phone, and I'll be able to get this working. I jury-rigged that setup. That's why it took so long to hook up. Not standing up for myself was my mistake back then, but I haven't let that happen again, especially with that entitled relative. Even my stepdad is still disgusted with her behavior that day. Story 2. A man in Washington, D.C., we'll call him Ronald, has decided to claim he should have won a contest he entered in Nevada. He's upset that people voted for the winner from home, and says that people should have gone there and voted instead, even though it's not against the rules for people to vote from home. He posted on social media that he would have won if the contest didn't allow remote voting. The official rules actually declare that remote voting is acceptable, but he keeps saying the in-home voting system can be hacked. His supporters claim that in other areas where the contest is running, the numbers have jumped up quickly for his opponents. He's actually trying to suppress voters. Last Tuesday, he started claiming he was winning, even though he was very far behind in terms of votes. On Wednesday, he claimed his opponent was cheating, while his opponent was just saying to count the votes. He responded with "stop the count" the next day. Stopping the count would give his opponent the win. So he used his brain even more and received 3 social media strikes in a row. He became angry about this, and his supporters' posts were full of claims that big tech is silencing this. Naturally, he challenged the contest itself, saying he'd debate the results with the moderators. His opponent won in the end, as the press and moderators called it last Saturday. Story 3. I recently read another story here about a racist woman doing typical racist behavior, and it reminded me of this incident from many years ago. I was sitting in the waiting room of a free general practitioner clinic in Australia, and they had several big TV screens. Free clinic means a long wait, so we were all watching the United States election results coming in, Obama's first win. I'm a young white woman, and this Karen sitting 2 seats down from me, fiddling with a large gold crucifix around her neck, did that obnoxious thing far too many racist white people do, where they say racist comments to other white people, trying to get them to agree. I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was something about Black Americans only voting for Obama because he was one of their kind. I told her directly that that was a pretty racist thing to say. She went quiet and then moved to another row of seats, a little further down from me, but kept glancing at me like she wanted to say something. I just ignored her. Maybe 10 minutes passed, and a young mother with 2 kids in tow came and sat a couple of seats down from me. She was Black, spoke with an accent I didn't recognize, and was clearly having a rough day. We got chatting, and she told me about her kids, her life stresses, etc. It seemed like she really needed someone to talk to, and I was happy to be able to listen. She asked if I was from here, and I said no, I'm from England. I joked about how I like it here much better. I asked, "How about you?" And she looked uncomfortable for a moment before hesitantly saying she was from Kenya. We chatted some more, And then she got up to take one of her kids to the bathroom. While she was sorting out her bag on the seat, the Karen, who'd been eavesdropping on our conversation, leaned over and said, weirdly loudly, "You do know she's lying to you, right? They're all like that. She's not really from Kenya. They just tell you that because they don't want you to know they're from some war-torn African hole." I was stunned. It's not common for me to be shocked into silence these days, but back then, that kind of brazen bigotry caught me entirely off guard. The young mother whipped around and snapped back at her. "You think I'm ashamed of where I'm from, just because you think I should be? How dare you judge me? God be merciful on your soul, because your bigotry is sin. Shame on you." And she left for the bathroom before Karen could even stammer out a response. It was amazing. Karen turned to me and said, "You see what I mean?" And I said, "What in the world is wrong with you? Mind your own business." She huffed and moved further away, but as soon as she went to sit down again, a receptionist who'd obviously heard Karen's weirdly loud attempt at, I guess, exposing the young mother, kicked her out for harassing other patients. Naturally, Karen tried to refuse to leave, but the receptionist handled her like the experienced professional she clearly was and put an immediate stop to that unacceptable behavior. I told the young mother about Karen getting kicked out when she returned, and she seemed genuinely surprised. It's unfortunate that she had reason to expect not to be supported in that kind of situation. Story 4. Hello. I work in an aquarium, and during the month of December, Santa visits and swims around the tank and talks to kids. It's an awesome thing and something different from the normal activities around here. This event happened a week before Christmas 2019. When Santa comes to the aquarium to swim with the sharks, he brings his elves with him to help talk to the children. I was one of these elves this year, my first year and maybe my only year because of this single woman. So we were doing our normal routine, and I was on the microphone talking to kids and translating child talk for Santa to hear. Keep in mind he is in the tank, and we use special microphones and earpieces so everyone can communicate, and it's projected in the room. Between children, my manager came up and explained that there was a young boy who was mute and just wanted a picture. I said, "Yeah, sure, anything." I was honestly just happy to be there and making $1 more than my normal pay. So we got to the young boy. He was about 9 and just stared as I directed him and his mom to scuba Santa. Mom took the microphone and talked to Santa. The mother started speaking. "Hi Santa, this is Boy. He doesn't say much, so is it okay if we just get a picture?" "Of course," Santa replied. And then he posed for the picture. I was standing off to the side, out of the way of the picture, checking the time, as we had to get Santa a break. Air tanks only hold so much air. As I was getting ready to call the dive team to get the new tank ready, there was a pop in my earpiece. I looked up to the microphone, and Boy was holding it. Mom stepped back towards me, and we all just watched. At this point, there was a small line forming, but we weren't worried about it. This was going to be the last child before the 5-minute break. "Santa, hi! For Christmas, I want a truck," said the little boy. The entire room went silent, and Mom started crying before explaining that he hadn't spoken in over 6 months. So I let him ramble to Santa for a bit. Most was lost because it was rambling, but Boy was loving it, and no one in line seemed to mind. This really was a Christmas miracle of sorts. Enter the entitled woman. She was in her 30s, with her friends, wanting a picture with Santa. Whatever, I didn't care. Boy finished his babble and went to say goodbye. This woman yelled over the crowd, "If he isn't going to say real words, get him off the microphone." My other elf friend was going to confront her, as I was connected to the microphone, and whatever I would say would have been broadcast everywhere. But before they could get to her, Santa's voice came over the speakers. Now, the fun fact about this particular Santa is that he was a no-nonsense kind of guy in the first place, and in this instant, he became my best friend. Santa said, "Why don't you be quiet?" Now, because he heard this, it means she said it loud enough for my microphone to pick it up and project it across the room. She turned very red but stayed in line. Santa finished with the boy, and I started my signal to Santa to let him know that he needed to go up for a new tank. "Santa, Mrs. Claus has some new cookies she wants you to try." "Now folks, Santa will be back after a short milk and cookie break," I informed them. Normally, people agree, and it's no big deal. We play games with the kids, sing a couple of songs, and before you know it, Santa is back. But today, this woman was not having it. "Oh, come on. You have a whole line here, and he's just leaving?" she complained. "He'll be right back, I promise," I assured her. And then I went into a song. This woman threw a fit, screaming, using inappropriate language, and making a real scene. I had left my microphone on, but while the song was playing, it wasn't projecting her voice. However, Santa could still hear her screaming. Eventually, he came back and finally went to her in line. I reluctantly let her go up, and I stepped out of the way for a picture after she told me that if I was anywhere near the picture, she would have my head. I had security on standby, and they were ready to walk her out because I don't want that nonsense, not in my aquarium. And the best thing ever happened. Santa asked, "Now hold on here. Are you the woman that yelled at the little boy?" She just sat there, staring at him. "I'll have you know that that makes you number 1 on the naughty list. We need to be compassionate and nice to others. My elves here are just doing what I have instructed them to do, and you are yelling at them. That's not in the spirit of the holidays. You need to apologize to everyone you have been mean to, and then go to the end of the line and wait again. Until that is done, I am not taking a picture with a naughty person." I was thrilled. The woman was very unpleasant. She ended up storming away, screaming for a manager. I believe she found one, but was escorted out without a picture. Boy got to meet Santa out of the tank and received a super special picture with him and all his elves. He's a regular at the aquarium now and likes to show us new words he's learned. It's amazing, and the diver is my favorite person forever and always.